What is up, everybody? Welcome back. I hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. We had an amazing weekend, or rivalry weekend in college football this past weekend. Bama took care of business in a classic Iron Bowl. Oregon and Oregon State ended in a blowout. The game, as usual, was incredibly hectic and intense. And, best of all, Florida State took down the Gators in the swamp. I personally was there to witness that happen and got my joy from that. We had a great weekend, but with that comes a conference championship week, and after that the playoffs, and we've got chaos on the horizon. There's no better way to put it. As always, I'm Sam Fortney. I'm here with Alex Herz today. We're going to discuss last night's rankings. We are going to talk about some breaking transfer portal news because, man, my phone has been blowing up all day with players entering the portal. It's just that time of year. We'll discuss the conference championship games this weekend, and with that, some playoff scenarios. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. Before we start, Alex, now that I do mention, I do want to hear some of your takeaways from rivalry weekend. Was there anything that stood out to you in particular between some of these big games?
So I think that rivalry weekend, first of all, was just such a great weekend as it is every year. The games are always amazing. The competition is just always so much better
No
on rivalry
blowouts.
weekend. No blowouts, great games, couple of upsets.
Yeah,
I would say the two biggest takeaways from rivalry weekend for me that stood out was two things. One was definitely that Louisville Kentucky game
I
because
know, me
that
too. I was
Kentucky
kind of bummed
game,
about that one too.
yes, a little bit for me too because I'm not a Louisville fan by any means,
We
right?
just like to see the
But
ACC do good, though. So much
exactly,
so much
bro.
slander gets thrown our way in the ACC.
Exactly. Put
For
some
those who don't know,
respect on
Michael's
them.
Alex is a Hurricanes fan, so for us ACC fans, we're always taking slander, and it's always nice to see an ACC team win.
Exactly. So I think that Kentucky upset was, very, very brutal for the ACC as a conference as a whole. And then, the stuff with their head coach happened about is he going to leave? Is he not going to leave? He
Right,
says he
right.
doesn't want to leave. So I think that was cool. But I think that the biggest takeaway from rivalry weekend has big playoff implications. And that was in the Florida State, Florida Gators game, you
Yeah,
know? In that game, we saw, a backup quarterback play.
for
Was it
both
his first?
teams.
Yeah, for both teams. That was his first start too for FSU, right?
At least this year, I think he might have gotten one last year. I know he played a couple
Okay.
times when Travis went down, but this was his first start this year. You throw him right into the fire in the swamp,
Mhm.
which as bad as the Gators are this year, that is one of the hardest places to play in all of
Oh,
college football.
undoubtedly.
So you throw him right into the
Undoubtedly.
fire on rivalry weekend. He didn't look amazing, but he looked as good as I expected him to, and we got the win, and that's what matters.
Exactly. So I think just seeing him and, getting his reps in and, he really started to pick it up in the second half. If
Yeah.
he can do that, FSU is not in as bad a position as they thought because trust me, those skill position players with, the running back, I kind of forgot his name, but
Trey
Johnny
Benson.
Wilson,
Yeah.
yes, Benson, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, those guys are some ballers.
They're legit. Not to mention the defense really came alive. Jared Verse tying his career high in sacks. I believe he had 2.5 sacks in the game.
Mhm.
Insane tackles for loss all over the place. Frisk got home. He got I think a sack and a half. So we were on it. Florida had their backup QB in, of course, but in rivalry weekend, anything can happen. And
Yep.
FSU went out there and for me showed that we're just more than one man show. Everyone counted out the Seminoles because Travis went down, and I think this was a big step in the right direction of proving that we're not just a one man team. We've got guys all over the defense that are going to go to the NFL. We've got skill positions players that are going to do their thing. This is a team that can still compete. And you're right. That was a big game for me to see how Tate did. He'll get another full week of reps going into this Louisville game.
Yep.
Um, Anything else you took away from rivalry weekend?
Just rivalry weekend was just, a whole bunch of enjoyment. For me personally, I've never claimed to be an Auburn or an Alabama fan, but the
Right.
Iron Bowl has always been a special place in my heart since the Chris Davis kick six.
Kicks.
And that game was just amazing. I do like Milrow a lot. I think he's a really good player overall. But other than that, just great weekend overall. Always such an enjoyment to watch and just, one of the best weekends in all of sports for sure.
I agree. I mean, and it really set us up nicely for these conference championship games this weekend. I think there was a couple games that we were looking at, and of course, they can change the whole dynamic of everything. Like you said, Gators versus Seminoles. If FSU had lost that game, it would have eliminated them from the playoffs essentially. Even though they'd be a one-loss team, we all kind of realized that for this team, you're walking such a thin line for a playoff berth that you can't really slip up. Just Alabama and Auburn. If Auburn had not lit up that crazy conversion on to end the game, Alabama would be eliminated from playoffs, and that's all we've been talking about for 2 weeks is how can
Hmm.
Alabama make the playoffs? Just so many scenarios. Had Oregon State upset Oregon, but it really set us up nicely. But what that does, also do is it signifies the end of the regular season in college football. And when we come to the end of the regular season, especially these last few years and presumably going forward, that's transfer portal season, right? So, second that opens up, 2023 has been the highest percentage of players entering the portal pretty much ever. Back to 2019, it was at 6.4% of players entered the portal in this period. Now we're up to 20% of FBS players are jumping ship. Uh, as fans, I just sit back and like this is, the NBA free agency. This is what gets us through the offseason is recruiting
Mhm.
and the transfer portal. Some huge names today. My phone's been going all day seeing who has
Yep.
entered the portal. The biggest one I think is Duke's Riley Leonard.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if he would stay one more year, maybe declare for the draft because he's the best quarterback available in my opinion. With Mike Elko leaving from Duke to go to A&M, it seems like that, it comes as less as a shock now. It seems like that's where he's going to go. Is that your
Yeah.
prediction for him? Do you think he follows his coach to A&M?
I definitely think with the starting quarterback for Texas A&M, Max Johnson, just transferring to Chapel Hill, UNC, I think
Yeah,
that's pretty much the obvious choice for him to go. Get another year, follow your head coach. We saw it just a couple years ago with Caleb Williams and uh,
Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley. Yes, there we go. But it's pretty much the obvious choice. If he goes anywhere else, I'll be a little bit surprised. But a couple teams are very quarterback needy right now.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot. I feel like with this, quarterback heavy draft coming up in the NFL and just the amount of quarterbacks who are kind of in the later years of their college eligibility, a lot of openings. Another huge name that I wanted to mention, he hasn't declared for the transfer portal, and as far as we know, he's probably coming back to school or if anything, the draft. But Cam Ward over at Washington State had an electric season. Not too much team success, but he personally had a great season. And it was
Hmm.
reported that he was getting like $1 million offers to transfer. I only really bring this up because one of the teams that was offering him was the Hurricanes. Do you have any opinions on Cam Ward if he was to transfer to your Hurricanes, or are you for that? Are you against that?
So my Hurricanes are in a little bit of a rough spot right now because I know another name that you were going to mention after
Tyler
this
Van
was
Dyke.
actually Tyler Van
Yeah.
Dyke. We saw last year, at least, and if you're a Hurricanes fan, you would know that there was some rumblings of Tyler Van Dyke getting wooed to Alabama. Obviously, it didn't end up happening. Tyler Van Dyke was pretty disappointing this year.
You have a young
Listen,
kid who looks pretty good though. Williams did show some flashes when he played.
yes.
Unfortunately, he got hurt, but Cam Ward is
So
a level above, respectfully.
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, just in terms of the Hurricanes, Cam Ward's a phenomenal player. I think that, he would fit in great here, but I think that we kind of like what we have. So, really, it's going to become an all out bidding war for him. Kid's got elite arm talent, just great vision across the field, good at reading like his spots, taking his shots. That kid is,
It's
we're
gonna
going to
be a
see him in the
bidding
NFL
war.
someday.
I saw Notre Dame, Ohio State. There's some other teams that are interested.
Hmm.
Obviously FSU with Jordan Travis's career being done, we'll need a quarterback next year. As much as Tate's going to show his flashes, we have a good kid coming in who we recruited. He's like the first 4-star out. Not quite a 5-star quarterback, but he's right there. We've got him, we've got Tate. I kind of would like a little veteran presence in that room, though. This is still a team that wants to build on success, and I'm not quite sure if Tate can build on success. So, Cam Ward, guys like that, if you want to come to FSU, we'll gladly welcome you with open arms. A few other quarterbacks out there that are big name that enter the transfer portal. Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. He did this last year. People were saying NFL talent after that crazy 2021 season where they were ranked. I mean, they went 11-1, were ranked near the top 10, and they felt like a sneaky contender. Last year, not so much. Tried to go to Auburn. It didn't quite work out, mostly because of grades. I know the Gators were in contention for him, but he enters the portal. KJ Jefferson is rumored to be getting in the portal. He denied he said he hasn't made his decision yet. And Will Howard from Kansas State. Those are probably the three biggest names on the market outside of Riley Leonard. Which of those guys is your personal favorite, and do you have any specific predictions for where any of those guys end up?
So out of those guys that you just named, my personal favorite is actually going to probably be KJ Jefferson. I think
Yeah.
that playing in an SEC environment, Arkansas hasn't just really been that good, but it hasn't really all been on him. There's
No,
a
I
lot
mean
of
he's
things
had a
that
weak
come with
supporting
coaching.
cast surrounding him, and last year
Exactly.
they did look pretty good for most of the year, just couldn't quite get it
Hmm.
done against top tier teams. But he himself is still a talent.
No, 100%. So, I think that he's probably my top guy on the board right now. Just, it's still so weird, Sam, with all
Yeah.
of this transfer portal stuff being so new, and then you throw in NIL as well, and it's
Right, and
just
and that's kind of what runs the whole thing now. Is the NIL runs the
exactly,
transfer portal, and
exactly.
It served as a building block though for a lot of these teams. Coaches are using it to make a name for themselves. Last year we saw guys like DJ Uiagalelei. He followed his coach Jonathan Brooks over to Oregon State. Jonathan Brooks has now switched schools, so will he transfer again? Who knows? Of course, Colorado. They make a lot of noise. I don't know. What was your opinion on Colorado this year? Because I haven't gotten to speak too much as far as college football goes. What was your whole take on Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and those boys over at Colorado?
Man, was Colorado exciting for the first 4 weeks, and that was about it. I mean,
Lost every game since, other than Arizona
that was
State.
one of the craziest hype trains that we have ever seen for the first half of the college football season, and then it just all fell apart. The wheels fell off. Travis Hunter was getting injured and everything like that. They're a good team. Deion's a great coach. I think Shador is an NFL level caliber quarterback. Obviously, Travis Hunter is,
So
Travis
you got
Hunter.
faith in them going forward, though. You think they'll
Oh
right the
yeah.
ship and
Oh
they'll
yeah.
get this thing going. I know
Listen,
we've had
I go
people
to
on the show who
USF,
haven't been too
bro.
fond.
Like
So
I go to USF and we went 1
yeah.
and 11 last year. We bring in a new we bring in a new head coach and we're
Hey, you
going
guys did,
bowling
yeah.
this year. So,
Unfortunately,
anything can
speaking of the
happen.
transfer portal, USF's quarterback did announce that he's transferring.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
but it
So,
was an improvement this year. Of course, you're 100% right. We've had a lot of people on this show who are not too fond of that whole Colorado hype train that went on. I've been 50-50 on it myself, but it's like I'm a little concerned for the program. The recruiting class is not even in the top 60 of this year.
it's
You
falling
lost
apart.
They've lost 3 commits in the last I guess it's 48 hours now because I read the report
Yep.
yesterday. So they've lost 3 big time commits in the last 48 hours. 2 of them being quarterbacks to follow Shador, and it's like you have this rough season. Dion is kind of struggling with the on the field coaching part. A lot of this stuff. I mean, is this something that just attacking the transfer portal can fix? You said that you're only a few pieces away, but you're losing pieces, and it seems like you're moving further away from that goal. They'll be in the Big 12 next year. I mean, overall, you said you still have confidence. Do you think they can fix this and compete in that new Big 12 conference next year?
I think that they can compete for sure. I mean, I think that Dion's going to get it right. However, I think that they need to dial back the antics. I mean, I'd be
I
scrolling on
agree. I can agree
Instagram,
with that.
on Twitter, and I'd be seeing these things about Dion just saying, you guys got to get this right. Stop with this, stop with that, blah, blah, blah. That can be, seen as coaching, right? But
Right,
then
right.
again, it's all media, it's all the
It is.
publicity.
All the wrist holding up and all the trash talk. It's like it's one thing, and I was even skeptical of the wins when they were happening, right? Like, let's be real. Nebraska was probably your best win. Well, people say the TCU, but TCU ended up not being bowl eligible. I mean, none of the
Hmm.
none of the 4 teams you beat, sorry, were bowl eligible. Nebraska got closest. TCU got kind of close, but I mean, they were just such shaky wins. And when you beat Nebraska, they started the worst quarterback in all of college football.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I mean, I feel like the hype train is going to wear down eventually, but next year is probably going to be Prime's biggest year because you got to
Oh,
improve. You can't
yeah.
regress. You get an easier schedule, so going under 4-8 in an easier schedule and an easier conference is going to be a big teller for
It's
them. But
make or
this transfer
break.
portal,
It's
yeah,
make or break. And
it
it's
is. It
weird
really
to
is.
say that in a guy's second year, but, with
Will he
all
get
that hype
fired?
around them,
Probably not.
yeah.
But I think next year, if stuff goes like that, you really got to dial it down, hype train wise, and maybe we just jumped on Dion as a great coach too soon. And that's possible. It happens.
Happens coming
Um,
from a SWAC school, small
yeah,
conference,
exactly
small
right.
football team. So
I just as a Miami fan, before we move out of the transfer portal, is there any specific players? I know like a guy from FIU is local Miami school, Chris Mitchell. He put up a lot of numbers this year. He's transferring. Are there any specific players you would like Miami to go out and get? Any needs you want to see filled? You've got a good recruiting class. It's in the teens. Is there anything specific or anyone specific that you're looking for?
I mean, me personally, this was a rough year.
It was an improvement year though. Like
It was an improvement year in
I was
certain
talking to another
aspects.
Canes fan, and like even he, Cristobal might not be the most likable guy, but last year was horrible, and you still improved this year. You've got a lot of bright spots, like a great O line. Like, so I mean, yeah, like I said, the original question, like, I mean, what's your takeaway? Who do you want to see? What do you want to see?
What I really want to see is just more stable offense, to be honest with you. I mean, Cristobal's getting the offensive line right. We saw steps this year from Jacoby George and Mark Fletcher, who is just going
Yeah,
to be an all-time Canes running back out of American Heritage. But I mean, we don't have consistent quarterback play. We don't have consistent play calling. It's just a whole debacle that I've been living my life through as a Canes fan. But what I would love to see is Miami go out and get another great wide receiver, hopefully somehow, some way, to
yeah,
pair up with the guys that they already have there. And I don't believe that a quarterback in the transfer portal is the way that they're going to go. Would I like to see one? Maybe. Do I have that
You
quarterback in
think they'll
mind
go
right
with
now?
Williams and let him, develop
Yeah.
into the offense?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of saw it, last offseason with college football. They didn't go out after any other quarterback.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were happy with Williams being the guy of the recruiting class. They recruited another guy, Judd Anderson, who's 6'7" with a rocket of an arm.
It's
They
crazy. It's crazy measurables for a quarterback.
Oh, 100%. So, kind of the Miami way is to develop in-house guys. Now, has it always worked? No, but you keep trying, and one of these times you're gonna hit. That's what I gotta hope for. That's what I
Yeah.
gotta pray for, man. So
Hey, I mean, with Cristobal and just being in Miami with all that presence around you, it is a historic program. We do sometimes forget. There's a lot of recruiting power there too. Like if you, all, I feel like all you really need, easier said than done, of course, the right coach, the right quarterback. But like with Cristobal there, the recruiting is handling itself. This thing feels like a developmental program, but as much as there's a rivalry between the two, we are still in the same conference, and you want to see as many
exactly.
good ACC teams as possible. Miami, I feel like, is
Actually,
in a much better
I
spot
will
than
say
than
one
Florida.
thing.
Yeah,
If there's one dream player that Miami can get to bring into this university and have them enroll and play football is wide receiver commit to Ohio State,
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah
Yes, he
Smith.
is amazing, and
If I could have one wish, it's
yeah,
Jeremiah Smith comes to Miami with Josiah Trader and brings the Chaminade Madonna magic to
that would be
Coral
insane.
Gables.
I've been looking into him a lot recently, of course, because while he is committed to Ohio State, we all know what flipping is like. With the news at Texas A&M, Cam Coleman, the five-star wide receiver recruit, has also been a hot
Mm-hmm.
topic in the news, whether he'll flip or not. Jeremiah spent a lot of time in visiting these Florida schools recently. Of course, he lives down
Yep.
here in South Florida. Florida State, I'm holding out a little hope. They are the favorites to flip him if he decides to
Yeah.
flip. They have been the favorites. UF has been right behind him. He's taken multiple visits to both school. But
Mm-hmm.
getting one of those, two Chaminade guys in your building, or even this Texas A&M kid now that he's available,
Yep.
pairing him, giving your young quarterback a weapon. That's what I love about recruiting season. And as the early signing period comes up, I believe it's December. We will see what kind of flipping goes on. But he would be a great get.
College football is not a season. It's not a couple months.
It's year
It's
round.
365 days a year,
That's what
every
makes it the
year.
best. It makes it the best sport that
Oh,
this country has to
100%.
offer, in my opinion. It's
Yep.
what drags so many people like us in. Is really that. But to move
Exactly.
away from the transfer portal, I don't want to spend too much time here. As fun as it is to talk about,
Yeah.
we'll have plenty more come the offseason. We do have some great conference championship games this weekend. Alabama goes to Georgia on what is probably the game of the week. Oregon
Yep.
and Washington is right up there with that, and then FSU, Louisville, and Michigan, Iowa, stuff like that. Texas, Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
Which of these games are you most looking forward to, and who do you think has the most to prove really this weekend?
So for me personally, I think that the most important game of the week is obviously going to be the Georgia Alabama game
Agreed,
because
agreed.
that's what opens up all these scenarios for all these first out teams to get
Yep.
into the playoff and what's going to happen if Alabama beats Georgia. Does Georgia fall out? Do they both get in? Does one get in, not the other? It's a whole big thing. So I think that's obviously going to be the most important game of the week, but my personal most interested game of the week is going to be, I honestly think is going to be this Michigan Iowa game, which you may not hear a lot of.
Hey, I
That
mean,
may
I'm
not,
repping. We rep over here.
there we go. Yep, we do rep out here. But I think that's going to be the most interesting game of the
Show
week
some
because
love to the punter.
exactly, I am very, very critical of Michigan. Very
Me too.
critical.
I
I
mean, who
think that
isn't, right? I mean,
Yes, I think that they did just play a playoff game, going up against Ohio State.
100%. Yeah,
You
100%.
can really consider that the first game of the playoffs. But here's the thing. In my opinion, Michigan fans are not going to like me when I say this, but JJ McCarthy is the most overrated quarterback I may have ever seen in all of college football. Ever.
He's up there. I mean, I'm not too far from agreeing with you. I think he shows flashes, and he's certainly a serviceable quarterback. Of course,
He's a winner. He's a winner.
had all players been healthy, he would be going against his predecessor at Michigan, Cade McNamara, who traded to Iowa. Unfortunately, or transferred. Sorry. Unfortunately, he got hurt. He won't be playing. But I mean, he's better than Cade was. He fits
Yeah.
the system better, and he's taken this team to that next level that they needed to, compete in the playoffs, even though he lost. I don't quite know if he's as good as he's peddled to be. right? And
Mhm.
are they in danger of losing to Iowa? Realistically, probably not.
Probably
But
not, but it's
you know,
going
as
to be a
bad as this,
game that shows us a
yeah,
lot.
as bad as this Iowa offense is, this defense is by far one of the best in the country. And had they had a serviceable offense, I think they'd be the best in the country. It's just, you can only
Yeah.
field the defense so many times before they give up points.
Mhm.
This is a top tier defense. You're not faced many like it. Michigan just came off a grueling game against another good defense. That's been the Big Ten's calling card this year, has been defense. So it's how much of a fight can that defense put up, and how will Michigan look? Because if their offense struggles against that great Iowa defense, then I'll have even more concern. I don't think their resume matches up with anybody in the playoffs. I get it. You had Ohio State and you have Penn State. I am so out on Penn State. I don't know about you. I think they're so fraudulent that win should be taken with the
Oh,
tiniest grain of
man.
salt ever.
Oh,
And
man,
it's
Penn
just I
State.
can't with Penn State. You beat Ohio State, good job. I don't like Ohio State either, and I root for them. But Kyle McCord is not that guy there.
Nope.
The offense overall was just never going to compete. None of us ever had a doubt that they were going to beat Michigan. So it's like I think your resume stacks up horribly, even against a team like Florida State. If there's even a semblance of an upset brewing against Iowa, I think they should be immediately put in fourth. Of course, if you win, you're in, but I think they should be demoted.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see how JJ plays against a really good defense, though.
Yeah. I think that he definitely got some things to figure out. I don't wanna,
And the
chirp on
receivers
Michigan
too.
too long, but
Not a lot of great receivers on that Michigan offense.
yeah, but I mean, all you do need is, those guys to rally around the guy, and the guy is
Right.
Roman Wilson in that
That's true.
offense.
That's true.
So,
That's very true. You got the running backs there. We'll see what that run game can do. Like you
mhm.
said, I mean, the most important game this weekend is by far Bama, Georgia. And I have to ask you, I think Georgia's going to win. I'm praying they do because I just want to avoid the chaos and I just want to see the Seminoles get in if they win and not have to sweat about it until Tuesday.
Exactly.
Um, God forbid Bama pulls off this upset. Georgia's a one-loss non-conference champ. Do they still get in? And if they do they and should they get in? I feel like those are two different things. But do they and should they get in the playoffs?
You put me in a rough spot here because when you look at the dynamics of the matchup, you have a 1 versus an 8. All
Right.
right. And yes, it's still the SEC championship. The SEC is the most important conference in college football. But do they both get in? My answer to that question is going to be yes. Both teams are still going to get in because it's Georgia. They're the 2-time defending national champions.
That's my issue with it though, is
They
we are basing it off of this year. If you lose,
they
if
can't
you
leave
lose
them out. They
I
just
know,
can't
and
leave them
I
out.
think they will? No. Should they? I think yes, because here's how it depends who else wins their matchups, by the way, also. Like that
Mhm.
hinges a lot. Because if Texas wins and Bama wins, you can't put Bama in and leave out Texas. And then Texas would be they would have a better record because they'd have the extra win of winning the conference championship, more wins against ranked opponents, the toughest strength of schedule, which they actually have number one strength of schedule in the country. They would have
Texas
everything better
does.
than Georgia. Texas has the number one strength of schedule in the
Wow, I
country.
didn't know
I
that.
I looked at it and I was in disbelief because it feels like they've played almost nobody other than Bama and Oklahoma, which are two hard games. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. It took me by surprise. But Texas should get in ahead of Georgia, and you can't put in Bama and leave out Texas because of the head-to-head. As much as that pains me to say it as an FSU fan, because then we would inevitably be the ones left out. But I just don't know because you got to look at Georgia's resume, right? They would have a good win over Missouri, a win over Ole Miss, who is the Penn State of the SEC, the most fraudulent third-place team you'll see, and Tennessee, who's a 4-loss team clinging onto a ranking for dear life because of SEC bias. That's not a resume that stacks up with Texas, who has the win over Bama, who just beat you. Rosters probably go player for player. So I don't
Yeah.
know. That's where I'm left in just chaos, and I don't know what the committee would do.
I want to avoid it. In all honesty, as a fan, I just want to avoid it because
I know.
then
Me
when I
too.
get that
I really do.
notification on my phone, it's going to be chaos, and Twitter's going to be crazy and social media is going to be crazy. Just Georgia, Washington, FSU, Michigan. Just
Right.
let
That
it be
feels like the
that.
simplest scenario. If the 5 favorites in the conference championship win, which of course is, it's I'm not gonna say likely, but there's a very good chance of it happening, right? Like these are all teams with clear
Even though
advantages.
Washington is not the favorite.
Right. That's what's crazy to me, and it's by 9.5. So I'm a little nervous about that game because it feels like we're
What
putting
does
a little too
Vegas
much
know?
into
What do they
Oregon.
know?
Yeah, it feels like we're putting a little too much into Oregon just off the basis. But it's like, okay, should the undefeateds win? And then Texas is left there. I don't think it's a debate between taking Texas over Florida State. Florida State should be in without a doubt. Texas has lost, aged poorly, because Oklahoma did not even qualify for the championship game.
Oh,
We have the same amount of no, actually Texas would have one more ranked win total, and then we would have the same amount. It would be tied in the amount of ranked wins over top 25 opponents at the time, because Clemson is now ranked, Louisville is ranked, LSU is ranked. It would be a 3v3. Um, yeah, and at the end of the day, they're undefeated, and Texas isn't. So, why play the
yep,
regular season games if we're not going to acknowledge the record? That's the dream scenario. That's the least amount of chaos. You just go with those four and you see what happens. We have. I don't like the Jordan Travis argument because we've seen precedent. TCU Max Duggan was not the starter last year. Going
yep,
into the season, he replaced. The most obvious one is Ohio State, Cardell Jones. There have been plenty
yep.
of teams that switch quarterbacks throughout the year. What's his name? Stetson Bennett
Yeah.
wasn't even the starter for a while. So it's like, we've seen all these teams do it. Jalen Milroe has been benched throughout this year.
It's just a bad argument. There's really
It
not,
is. It's a bad argument. We've seen a national champion do it. Like Ohio State came in with their
yeah.
third string and won. I don't like that argument. Judge a team off of a team, not just
Tua Jalen
uh,
Hurts.
the
We've
quarterback. Right. Tua Jalen
we've
Hurts.
seen
That's
it
what
all
I was looking
happen.
for.
Like
Yeah,
it's a
exactly. And
bad
he was a
argument.
freshman.
Yeah, it's a bad argument. It's not fair to rank a team based on who's playing at their quarterback position. They went through the season, and as long as they didn't lose with the quarterback who's playing, why
And
dock them?
and I hate when people use TCU in this argument of, well, we let these teams undeserving or not for best get in the playoffs and then
No.
they get blown out. TCU won a
Mm-mm.
game. They beat
Yep.
Michigan in the playoffs, made it to the
Yep.
finals. Sure, it was disappointing, but you know what? If you wanted Michigan there so bad, win some games. I mean, beat the team when you play the team. And so it's like,
Yeah, you're getting a little fired up about it. I can tell.
yeah,
I
I
can
mean,
tell.
it really, it's
Listen,
because it's
I mean,
ridiculous. You go on TV and you see guys like Paul Feinbaum who are just kind of glazing the SEC over the top. And I mean, Bama could have 4 losses and he'll
it's
stay
just
put them in.
it's just this conference by conference, notion that's just so stupid. I mean, even a couple years ago, right? We saw Kyler Murray single-handedly take on the entire team of Georgia,
Exactly.
and he
And,
fought hard. Like
and they
they've
throw
not been the
shots.
best team, but they
Yeah,
deserve to get in. They win the games, they get in.
they throw shots at the resume of teams like Florida State when we have just as many ranked wins. LSU, and then they say, but that's week 2. What is the point of playing these teams? The only way to beef up your resume is to schedule tough non-conference opponents. That is exactly what the team goes and does. Same thing with Texas and Bama, right, by the way. Like, they schedule tough non-conference opponents, and now that's being used against Texas and Florida State in their arguments is, well, you played these teams in week 2. I think all that is just ridiculous. Yeah, you're right. It gets me fired up because what is the point of playing these regular season games if we are just going to discount them? The season does not start in week 6 and 7. It starts in week 1 or week 0 for some teams,
Exactly.
and you got to win your games. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just that's how it is.
Totally
But I
agree with
mean,
you.
those are all the playoff scenarios. Give me your 4 that you think. Like, give me your prediction for the 4 that will get in.
Well, I did kind of say it.
Right,
I
you're
think
right. Yeah, I mean,
I said
but I guess I didn't ask
Georgia.
you straight up your predictions.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll say it one more time. It was Georgia, Florida State, Michigan, and Washington. I think that Washington gets the job done against Oregon. Florida State gets the job done against Louisville. It's going to be a close game between Alabama and Georgia, but Georgia will pull it out. And then, not a Michigan fan, but
Do
they're
you
going to
think
do it.
Georgia three-peats if all those teams get in the way you've lined it out? Do you think Georgia goes in three-peats?
I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say that Georgia is going to three-peat, but the biggest threat to Georgia is going to be Washington. That's my pick.
You think so? I think
I think,
I think Washington is better than Michigan in my opinion.
yeah.
If Oregon gets in, Oregon might be the better team than Washington. I don't know. We'll have to see it play out this weekend. I think if
Mhm.
Oregon gets in, they should be a huge threat to Georgia too.
Yep.
I don't trust Michigan in the playoffs, and for
Nope.
as much as I love Florida State, I'm not going to sit up here and say that they can beat Georgia. So do you think that Washington can pull off the upset, or do you think they will? Like, is that your actual prediction right now? If
That
I'm
is
to ask you,
my lock it in stone cold prediction. I think
Washington
Michael
is this year's
Penix is
national
going to get it
champion.
done. I think that Romeo Odunze is the best wide receiver in college football, 1A, 1B with Marvin Harrison Jr. They have a great coach. They have an overall good team. The defense isn't too bad. Bo Nix, I've loved him since he was at Auburn. I think that he's had, a Heisman caliber season, but, maybe we'll get into that later,
Right, right.
talking about that. But, you know, Michael Penix in Washington. I think that it's going to be them versus Georgia for the national championship, and it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, before the season, my pick was Georgia to three-peat, and I haven't seen anything to make me move off and say that they shouldn't win anymore. Of course, this weekend is their biggest game by far, up to date. I still think that's going to happen. If I was to give you my four, I think Oregon gets the job done, and then in order, I'll say it's probably gonna be Georgia the 1 seed, Michigan the 2. I don't see how you can move one-loss Oregon above Florida State, so I think Florida State would get bumped up to 3, and then you put Oregon at the 4. As much as I know I just said that Oregon would give Georgia a run for their money. I still think Georgia would probably pull it out in the end, and then I think they would beat Michigan. Although Florida State will give them a run for their money, I'll say that now. Um, I think they'll beat Michigan in the national championship and three-peats.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Maybe not Washington losing because you go against me there, but I do
Yeah,
like
I
it.
mean, we'll have to see. And just that 9.5 line, something's just sticking out to me there. It seems too big for
Mm-hmm.
something not to be up.
Yeah.
But you did mention Heisman. I do want to get your take real quick on that. Obviously, most people acknowledge it's a two-man race between Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. Who's your personal pick for the Heisman?
Super quick, super easy. Jaden
Yeah.
Daniels is the best player in college football. He deserves that trophy. If he's not hoisting it, nobody should.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing they're going to hold against him is the win-loss. And coincidentally, the only game this year he didn't really look like a Heisman was against the Knowles. So, I'll leave that there.
Yep.
I just I favor Bo Nix over Jaden Daniels, but yeah, if you ask me to put money on it, I'm gonna say Jaden Daniels wins it.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Are there any final thoughts that you kind of want to share before we wrap this thing up?
I just want to, capitalize on how great of a college football season it was. I mean,
Oh,
this was
100%.
probably one of my most enjoyable seasons in a long time.
Agreed.
Just, how good the Canes were this year, their improvement that they showed. Just overall college football, we got some really good games, starting it off early with Colorado TCU, Washington, Oregon, part one. We're going to see part two this weekend. Rivalry week was amazing. Um, just super exciting, super really good year. I love just, college football so much. It's really grown on me, as I've gotten older. Cause like I
Yeah,
said
agreed.
earlier,
Me too.
it's a 365-day sport.
You never
You
get a
know,
day off, really, and
never get a
it's
day
weird because we
off.
have the longest off season I think of any sport. But whether it's recruiting, transfer portal, spring games, there's
hmm
always something to talk about.
There's always something to talk about. So it's always so interesting and it's always so much fun. And other than that, I just want to say, Sam, thanks for having me on again.
Of
It's always a
course, man.
blast to be on the show. And yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching as always. Remember to like, subscribe, comment what you want to see more of. We're growing quick and we're ending we're coming up on our first full year anniversary of the channel. I just want to thank everyone so much for being here. We've done really good growth, especially in this fall. And I'm looking forward to growing with you guys. We've got a lot more coming. Of course, we're going to finish out the NFL season, finish out the college season. We're going to start getting into NBA. With UFC, with cards like 296 coming up, we want to expand there. So it's all about expansion and growing and catering to you guys and continuing to develop as a channel. Thank you all for the support. Alex, man, thank you so much for coming on again. I really hope to get you soon. It's been great talking to you. And
Anytime.
just thank you to everyone, man. We will be back soon. And until next time, take care, everybody.